I hereby call the special school committee meeting to order, it being Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 at 6 p.m. We're at the George M. Romm Little Theater here at Brockton High, 470 Forest Ave, Brockton, Mass. 02301. I would ask us, please, to stand and salute the American flag, which is to my right. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members of the committee, I just have to read the following to the record. This meeting will be held and will be accessible to the public via Comcast Channel 8 and also the 1071 HD version, and also finally online via the following link, which is www.youtube.com/TheBrocktonChannels. At this time, I will establish a quorum by calling the roll. Mrs. Sullivan? Mr. Vega?
Here.
Ms. Oliver?
Here.
Vice Chair?
Here.
Ms. Azak?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
I'm here as well. Mr. Vice Chair, do you know if Mr. Gomez is on Zoom today?
No, he's en route. So
Okay, he's en route. Okay. This time we'll go on to agenda item 4, which is hearing of visitors. Again, each person that signed in, and Mrs. Campbell has given me 6 individuals. You're limited to 3 minutes. And the first will be Lenny Montero, please. Good evening, Lenny.
Evening, everyone. My name is Anita Lenny Montero, and I stand before you as one of the co-founders, along with Dr. Amina Pilgrim, and the Executive Director of Sabuda Youth Programs. I am a BPS alumni and a top graduate of the BHS class of '97. Sabuda means fun in Cabo Verdean Creole, but is also an acronym for Student Ambassadors Bonded Under Recreation and Achievement, with the mission to engage, educate, and empower youth with culturally and linguistically tailored programming. Sabuda started in 2014 with 75 youths to now serving over 300 youths throughout the school year. I'm here today because I was bothered by the last school committee meeting in which my name and Sabuda was brought up several times, and the feeling that the community center is a hindrance. It wasn't about me or Sabuda, but the community center. Sabuda developed a relationship with BPS in 2014 with our summer program, and in 2018, the relationship strengthened with Sabuda serving as the community organization with a $2.7 million grant from the Department of Education, spearheaded by Lesley University. The project focused on challenges faced by English language learners. This was done through family and community engagement projects, such as 1,300 literacy bags distributed to BPS students. Along with the bilingual department, the grant provided 70 BPS teachers and a cohort of parents a graduate certificate in parent and community engagement. With this grant, we grew from 1 ESOL class to currently 8 ESOL classes, a conversation class, 2 citizenship classes, and parent workshops. Partnerships are the key to a student's success. Schools should engage stakeholders and strategically partner with families and community organizations to provide students with a full range of opportunities and supports and positive relationships. The community center was started in January 2020 during the pandemic, and the superintendent, in a meeting with stakeholders, asked that all hands be on deck to support our students, and the center has been all hands on deck since then. The center doesn't just provide space for Sabuda youth programs, but C-Plan, Cape Verdean Women United, Choices for Teens, Let's Make Friends, Outsiders Reading Group, and other organizations that collaboratively work together to provide workshops, after-school programs, creating a community garden, supporting development of parent councils, and having a food and backpack distribution drive. We have strong relationships with the bilingual department, with the Family Academy, Community Schools, 21st Century, CFCE, and the CPPI initiative, serving families and providing data which allows the district to get funding. Countless organizations dedicating and contributing over $4 million of their own funding to serve the youth and their families. Thank you to those that have come to the center to see the programs, and we hope to continue to build and work together and maintain a positive relationship with BPS to ensure the success of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. Hamilton Rodriguez, please. Hamilton Rodriguez.
Good evening, everyone. The reason why I'm here today is because it came to my attention that the Memorial Day parade is going to be canceled. And I'm asking to see if it can be at least postponed. This is a parade that's been going on for years, and it's in support of veterans.
Rodriguez, just point of information, Memorial Day parade will not be canceled. That's going to be kicking off at 10 o'clock on Memorial Day. I think you might be talking about the Huntington School Parade.
Yeah, Huntington, this is the Huntington School Parade, yeah. So I think we should, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. So I think we should have that postponed instead of canceling it. It came to my attention that it's going to cost $125,000 to put this parade on. I think if we get business owners to come together, residents to come together and fundraise this event, the city, the people in the city could put this parade on themselves. If we could have the police department volunteer on that day, the fire department volunteer, and I think we should at least postpone this for another date instead of canceling it. It's been going on for many years. So that's what brings me here today. And I just hope to see that this thing is postponed and not canceled. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. George Brickhouse, please. George Brickhouse.
Good evening, everyone. My name is George Brickhouse, as the mayor just pointed out to you. It is often said that if two or more are gathered, then we know that the Lord is in the room with us. And so that's what I like to start out with today, that we are all being observed and we're all being brought up to where we will be at some time in the future. I'm here because I read in the newspaper about a search for a superintendent being started. And what I wanted to do was to point out that if Dr. Cobbs were not going to remain in that position because he chose not to, then he should at least be included in that search committee. If Dr. Cobbs or Mike Thomas, which are the two people who've been involved with the school, are not being looked at as the present superintendent, then they should, at least Dr. Cobb should be involved in the search committee for that position. I think we should enlarge that also. From what I read in the newspaper, there were 4 people who would be the search group. I would like to see that enlarged to also include 2 city councilors and at least 3 registered Brockton voters, as we had people that were on board in terms of finding out the mismanagement of the finances. I think we should also have a transparency as to who and what we are doing, based on the fact that for a period of time now, there's been a mismanagement and misappropriation of funds in the direction of our young people. That is essentially what got me here today. I do have a program that I'd like to see involved in the school, but I'm not going to talk about that this time. The fact that if Dr. Cobbs has decided that he does not want to continue in his position as superintendent, no longer acting, but as superintendent, and if the decision that Mike Thomas is not ready to come back or not able to come back for whatever reason, then include the people who are the community in that search. Not just 4 people at this table to be that search party. Make it something that the community can say, we are voicing our opinions of what we want to do with our young people. Because it isn't about me, it isn't about today, and I also include Ms. Sullivan, if she chose to be on that committee also. Thank you for your time, and bless all.
Thank you, Mr. Brickhouse. Jim Stapleton, please. Mr. Stapleton.
My topic tonight wouldn't be so serious as saving Huntington Day Parade and superintendent searches. My topic is real simple. As many of you know, I know all the school committee knows, we raised a lot of money at South Middle School. Last year we had a big gala and I'm not here to talk about the gala right now, but one of the things we raised the money for was to provide children with opportunities. Recently, and I don't know the processes I should after 38 years, about requesting field trips. Recently, we tried to get our 6th grade to a Carousel Family Center over in Whitman, and the 7th grade to a Fun Z trampoline, a Brockton business down the south side. Both of these trips would benefit the kids' social, emotional learning, team building, the end of the year, and because we raised the money, this is what we raised the money for. And I don't know the process, I don't know where to go. We send this down to this big labyrinth, I guess, on Crescent Street, and we get the rejection that there's no field trip. And so I don't know who to reach out to. I'm not going to involve my principal. I'm not going to involve the vice principal. They have enough responsibilities. But I just come seeking support and help as to why the money we raised. And I'm right now at a fundraiser, Texas Roadhouse. Anyone watching right now on TV, if you're hungry, Texas Roadhouse, go benefit South Middle School. Come on up. We'll be there till 8:30. But with that said, I'm just wondering the process as to why. Who do I reach out to? Where do I go to get 2 field trips approved after the academic part of the year is done? By then, all the MCAS, all the state testing will be done. And it'd be a nice thing for the kids. The 6th and 7th graders were younger when COVID struck, but there's still a lot of social and emotional issues for them to deal with. And anytime you can bring kids together and a chance to improve their lives, improve their school learning, because learning isn't just the academic side, it's the social side also. So that's why I came seeking support, seeking help. Someone point me in the right direction, please. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stapleton. Michelle Henson, please. Ms. Henson, please.
Hey everyone, I hope folks are good this evening. I'm concerned about programs like Lenny's, and I know that you're saying that it's not going away and that you're giving spaces. But if anyone in your office, Dr. Cobbs, were asked to pick up their materials every day, one of your teachers were expected to gather all their materials and take them and move from space to space, I don't think that we would find that reasonable. So I heard you when you said that you were going to make sure they had space. I also heard you when you said it's not our responsibility to educate adults. It's more than just educating adults. This is about supporting our community. I've heard people around this table complain that parents don't show up. Oh, the parents don't care. Where are the parents? Well, some of the parents need support. And when you take away their supports, don't complain that they don't show up. Instead of making it more difficult for her, I would hope that we could find a way in the space to make it easier, to expand for her and for other programs, Adult Learning Center, all the rest. You know, you're taking away too many things in the community. Look what happened when you took away some of the mentors. Now it came back to bite you in the butt real badly, and we're scrambling, right? Let's not do that again with these programs. Don't take them away, don't make it hard, make it easier. Expand her program and help others to support her. Help us to grow. Stop saying we don't show up. It kills me, it hurts right now to be standing here physically. Don't tell me that people don't show up. You got people here, but don't expect people to show up and then you just don't listen to what they have to say and just like in their face. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Henson. Just if we could have the minutes reflect that school committee member, Mr. Gomes, has joined us as well. Claudio, thank you for being here. Last individual that has signed in for hearing a visit is Donna Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon, please.
Good evening, everybody. I've never been part of this before. I am a parent of a child at the Huntington Day Academy. My concern is the fact that there is a discrepancy on who, not a discrepancy, but push and pull, if you will, of who's going to go into the space on Summer Street. I'd like to understand why a school that is already established, such as the Champion, that is now residing, if I'm not mistaken, in the greenhouse here at Brockton High. It's established school building, everything is already set up here. But you're talking about moving double the amount of students to a smaller space. The space that's going to house, is my understanding, is only 2 floors. Currently, the children in the Huntington Day Academy, the windows on the 2nd floor do not open. I don't know if all of them do not, but a lot do not. The fact that this also at one point was a methadone clinic bothers me. My child should not be there. All 3 of my children went through the Brockton school system. 1 failed miserably. She was thrown to the wayside. My youngest is struggling with social emotional depression and other things. The Huntington has been a godsend. My child started at the Arnone. By the end of her term at the Arnone, before she went to middle school, she was bullied and had balls thrown at her on the last day of school. The school felt no need to call me and tell me. Sent her to West Middle School. Over 6 months of bullying to my kid coming home crying every day. Nobody did anything. I went. I made a scene. They put in a window. Nothing happened. I transferred my daughter to the Champion. She was starting to feel comfortable, and then she opened up. And the next thing I know, my daughter has been hospitalized for 5 days because she talked about suicide. Touchy subject, I understand. But when you're dealing with social emotional children, you don't automatically jump the gun. That damaged her even more. She didn't want to go there anymore. She felt unsafe, that no one was listening, that it was just, oh, that word. Get rid of him, we can't have it here, we can't handle it. The fact that the times are changing, education is changing, what we need to learn social emotionally is changing. Right now, the Huntington is on the top of the list. Everyone there has a grasp of what's happening. They want to bring back the lower grades. Let's help them do that by giving them this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Killen. That concludes hearing of visitors, Agenda 4. We'll go on to Agenda 5. I'll read the following into the record. Executive session, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the body and the chair so declares, as chair, I do so declare relative to the BEA. Members of the committee, I need to entertain a motion at this time to go into executive session. Is there a motion?
Motion to go into executive session.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. We'll give it to Mr. Sullivan. Ms. Azak made the motion, properly seconded by Mr. Sullivan. I need to call the roll relative to executive session. Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes?
Yes.
Mr. Vega?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Vice Chair?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
I'm yes as well, but I do want to say we will be coming back into open session. So at this time, we will leave the Romm Little Theater, go into executive session, but we will be coming back here into open session. The school committee for the special school committee meeting dated May 15, 2024 is back into session. I do need to reestablish a quorum since we just came back out of executive session. Agenda item 5. Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah.
Mr. Gomes?
Here.
Mr. Vega?
Here.
Ms. Oliver?
Here.
Vice Chair?
Here.
Ms. Azak?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
I'm here as well. We have established a quorum at this time. Mrs. Sullivan?
I'd like to make a motion to take 8A out of order.
Is there a second on that motion, please? Second. I think Mr. Gomes got you there, Mr. Sullivan. So motion was made by Mrs. Sullivan, properly seconded by Mr. Gomes, to take Agenda 8A, which is discussion and potential vote, reduction in force RIF, Brockton Education Association, BEA. All in favor of taking that out of order, please raise your hand. If you're opposed, raise your hand. It passes unanimous. Dr. Cobbs, you have the floor. Agenda 8A, please.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, school committee members. So pursuant to the executive session, we need a vote to approve the RIF list, and I will read through the positions. One is the BVLA ESL teacher. Another is the BVLA grade 2-3 teacher. Special education teacher, assistant director of SPED early childhood, special education ASD coordinator, at Central Guidance 628 coordinator, BVLA sub-separate teacher, Promise High School instructional resource specialist, BVLA 5-4 teacher, BHS Brockton High School floor teachers, re-engagement floor teacher, Central EDI senior administrator for professional growth, and that's the list.
Thank you, Dr. Cobbs. This time, any discussion relative to the RIF notices as articulated on the record by Dr. Cobbs? Mrs. Sullivan, please.
Dr. Cobbs, I just didn't know if you had to read the interim floor teacher.
Which one? Yes, it's a BHS interim floor teacher, yes.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I
Thank you,
just
Mr.
kind of
Sullivan.
grouped that with the BHS floor teachers. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Mr. Vega, you have the floor.
Just for folks who may not be aware of terms like involuntary transfer and RIF, like what do those mean, and what are the distinctions between the two?
So essentially, involuntary transfer means that we have what we call pink slips and blue slips. The pink slips will be the job is gone, terminated. The blue slips, which are the involuntary transfer, means that those people will be eligible to apply for positions, open positions anywhere else in the district, or be involuntary transferred to a position. Like they may get a choice first, but ultimately they'll be placed someplace in the district. The RIF notices mean pretty much those positions go away. But on this particular RIF list for the floor teachers, they're going to move to a different job description. So that's why we have to eliminate that position, and they'll move to another position.
And these floor teacher positions will be augmented, or other folks are going to be brought in that are focused on hallway security?
Safety and security, absolutely.
Mr. Vega, any follow-ups? Any other questions or comments at this time? I do want to just go on the record and thank Kim Gibson, the president of the BEA, who comes to every meeting. I want to thank the BEA for working with the administration and BPS on these endeavors. What is the will of the committee at this time?
I make a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendations for the reduction in force with the BEA.
Form of a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion was made by Mrs. Sullivan. It was properly seconded by Ms. Azak. I'll just read the roll. Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes?
Yes.
Mr. Vega?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Vice Chair Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, so that matter passes unanimous.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Cobbs. At this time, we will continue.
Another one we want to take out of order.
Yep. At this time, I'd like to entertain that we take number 7, and I know both Mr. Clarkson and Ms. Boyer are here, so we can talk about FY 2025 budget update, and then we'd go back to number 6, update from Mr. TJ Plant from Open Architects. Could we take that in the form of a motion, please? They take 7 out of order prior to number 6?
Motion to take 7 out of order.
Mr. Vega made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm going to give Ms. Oliver that. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed, raise your hand. It does pass. So at this time, we're going to take number 7 out of order. FY 2025 budget update, City CFO, Mr. Troy Clarkson, Interim School Business Administrator, Ms. Patricia Boyer. Troy and Trish, the floor is yours, and thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. TJ was going to put a few documents up for me, but I'm not sure if he's tuned in yet. So if we can get TJ on.
Texted him right now.
Okay, and then he can put some of this up so that all of you can see it. Otherwise, I put some documents on your desks for all of the school committee members to see. So I'm going to start with explaining the budget process, just so that everyone's on the same page. So the first document that you have in front of you is the stapled package. And this information is from the Department of Revenue. And this is what is called the FY25 preliminary cherry sheet estimate. So you'll notice there are 5 columns that go across this page. This is how the state prepares its budget.
I'm sorry, Trish, not to interrupt.
Sure.
Could you check Mr. Plant said he's on right now? He is on? Okay, thank you, Trish. He's on.
You're welcome. TJ, if you could put up the Department of Revenue page, if you can, show it on your screen, that would be great. So the very first column shows what the FY24 cherry sheet estimate was. The second column is the FY25 governor's proposal. There's a few iterations of the budget that occur after the governor's budget. After the governor prepares her budget, it goes to the House, they give their estimates, then it goes to the Senate, then the final version is the conference committee.
I'm working on it right now. I'll bring it up next time.
Thank you. Once the governor gives her proposal, his or her proposal, the Department of Ed takes that information, and this is where page 2 of that packet comes in. This is how the Department of Education calculates the required net school spending for every school district. So if you look at the middle of the page, where it says the comparison to FY24, and I've highlighted in yellow FY24's figures and FY25's figures. If you look under the FY25 column, you'll see an amount of $314 million. Just to the left of that, the description says the required net school spending. So the Department of Education has determined that Brockton's minimum required net school spending equal $314 million. That number comes from the school's net school spending budget plus the city's Schedule 19 budget. So we cannot spend jointly between the city and the school, we cannot spend less than $314 million on net school spending. Non-net school spending is not included in this calculation. If you do not meet your minimum net school spending, you must make up what you did not spend the following year. So you have to pay it one way or another. For instance, if we only met net school spending of $310 million, we'd have to pay that $4 million in addition to what they require us to spend in the following year. Also, if you don't meet your required net school spending by more than 5%, you get a penalty charged on top of that. I'm not sure what the rate is. I think it's 5% penalty if you are 95% or less of meeting your net school spending. So there are consequences to not meeting the net school spending. So it's very important that we're familiar with this number of $314 million because we need to meet that. Next, I want to go on to, TJ, you don't have this page, but it looks like this. This is called our operational budget worksheet. So what we did was, being new to Brockton this year, and starting in January, the budget process really probably would have started before the holidays, the Christmas holidays, or if not then, in January. We just started this process late in the year, so we've had to rush to get this done. So the first thing that I did to put a budget together, not having history of the previous budget, was I looked at our FY24 approved budget book, which is this paperwork, okay? This is FY24's approved budget. Secondly, I did a historical review on all of these accounts, meaning I went back and I looked at the last few years' spending from 2021, 22, 23, basically. And I came up with an amount in my mind of where, based on the budget book and the history, where I thought the dollars should land in terms of an FY25 budget. My third step was to take the FY24 expenditures to date. What's in Munis? What does Munis say we spent to date on this? The budget is one thing, but what are we spending? What's the actual expenditures? Now, granted, when we haven't finished out the year, so I had to make a little adjustments in my mind for April, May, and June's expenditures still to come. My fourth step was to bring this to the cabinet. The cabinet and I, led by Dr. Cobbs, went through our 24 budget book, page by page, line by line, and based on the information that I had put together, we estimated what we thought would be the best budget for FY25 for that line item. Towards the bottom of that page, you'll see a total of $45 million, $45,379,000. The line below that shows our estimated circuit breaker that we expect to receive from the state in '25. We use that $7 million to offset our operating costs, to offset special ed operating costs. So I took the $45 million budget and I said, I'm offsetting it by $7 million that is coming in. So our total operating costs from local funds should equal $38 million. Okay? Next, we're going to go to the final page that I handed out to you. And it's a horizontal page or a landscape page. This is where we put the whole budget together. Across the top, it says personal services projections, but it's really our whole budget projections. I just didn't change the title. On this page, what we did was I had a staff member take every person who is still employed by the school district today, calculate what their salary is going to be for FY25 based on their union contract. These groups are broken down by the union contracts themselves. So the first group listed is the 5,000 group. Those are non-union staff members. The second group, 5,001, is the teachers, etc. So all of those groups labeled 5,000 to 5,020 are bargaining unit groups, and most of them have their contracts in place. So we know what their salaries are going to be for next year. We entered every single person and calculated every single increase in their salary to come up with our FY25 salary projections for those individuals in those groups. Below the groups that are in the unions, we have other salary expenditures that occur. These are not necessarily people in a union. For instance, the crossing guard duty salaries is listed there. The athletics salary is listed there. The bilingual translations. Again, all of these items were pulled from the budget book. So we estimated if there were less people in any of these areas than in FY23 or FY24, or if there were more people, we adjusted accordingly. So all of these people in the salary area are current staff. They're bodies that are in our buildings every day. Towards the end, towards the bottom of that, you'll see vacancies to be filled. You'll see an amount for vacancies to be filled. These are positions that have were in the 24 budget, advertised to be filled, but were not. Some were not filled, but the dollar amount is still in the budget. Some were filled by long-term subs or part-time subs. So those vacancies are already positions that are in the budget, just have not been filled. We intend to fill them in FY25. The total salaries comes to $188 million. $188.4 million. The operating budget of $38.3 million comes from the net of the page that I had previously spoken about. That $38.3 million was carried over into this budget page. If we add the net salaries and the net operating budget, it gives us a net school spending of $226 million. If the school spends $226 million, the city has to come up with $87 million in net school spending to equal the $314 million that we are required to spend per DESI. We cannot spend a penny less. Many wealthy communities spend more, much more than their minimum required, but we budget to just meet our net school spending. Below the $226 million, you'll see our non-net school spending, an estimated amount of $19.5 million. Those costs are added on the previous page that we spoke about, our operating budget. Towards the bottom of that page shows what we anticipate our non-net school spending amounts to be. That's where the $19.5 million comes from. So our total budget as of this moment, we're tweaking it every day as more information comes in. Our total budget from the city, we are estimated to be at $246 million. This is $1.6 million less than what TJ from Open Architects had calculated our net school spending to be when over the winter months, when he gave us a lot of the non-net school spending calculations, and we had the final net school spending meeting in the Nissel room at Central, and TJ put his presentation up there. TJ had calculated the net school spending based to be $247,979,000. So our budget right now stands at 1.6 less than what TJ has calculated. Now, don't forget that the Chapter 70 funding is still not set in stone. There's still the conference committee that has to make its final recommendations, so that may move the budget a little bit. It may stay the same. It may move the budget a little bit. That's how we calculate the budget. So I am 100% confident in what I've contributed to putting this budget together. I stand behind it. I put my reputation behind it. We've gone over it with a fine-tooth comb, so.
Trish, thank you. I just had two questions. One's a clarifier. So the vacancies to be filled, the $4.7 million, that's the vote we took last week at the unknown school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then in terms of the non-net, I know originally it was 18, there was 18.7, and I understand why it's up to 19.5, because to the right of that, CS is community schools, 288 grand, and traffic is 550 grand. But what happens if the transportation costs, I mean, that number could still be fluid based upon the cost of transportation, correct?
It absolutely is, yes, yes. While we are aware of the budget and the expenditures behind the transportation department, we've committed to doing the best we can to get the transportation costs under control in FY25.
Thank you, Trish.
You're welcome.
I know Mr. Clarkson is here as well. I don't know if the will of the committee is to ask Trish questions now or have Troy share his thoughts and then open it up to both of them, whatever the will of the committee is. Sure, Mr. Gomes.
I just wanted to make sure. So the vacancy is now 5.2 million.
The vacancies are 5.2 million, but there are people in those positions now.
Okay.
I don't know what that amount is. There may be $4 million of that may be filled by long-term subs, part-time subs, teachers filling in for others, et cetera.
No, just make sure, because when we took the vote, I put a little note, because we said we wouldn't go over that amount. So
Right.
it was 5.2, yeah.
We're aware of that.
Yeah, okay. Just to
Just one more question, Trish. Relative to the available for ads, the 1.6.
Yes.
So I understand your 246,000, right? I get that. You get the non-net, you get the net, and then you come up with a figure. But TJ's, and I know you're here, Mr. Plant, so feel free to jump in, but your calculations were based on months ago. So I don't know how you could actually take 247.9 million and say there's available ads. That's what I'm a little confused on.
So when TJ put his net school spending calculations together,
Yep,
he based it on the governor's budget.
correct.
It has since gone to the House and the Senate.
Yep,
Chapter 70 funding has since gone up 270,000 since the time TJ did this. So it's more the actual numbers today are more beneficial than when TJ had originally put this together. And again, all of this is based on the final numbers for Chapter 70.
and the final number on transportation. Because if you based it on 19.5, right?
Yep.
And that number doesn't stay static, it goes up to 22, then that 1.6 is gone. That's the only thing I'm
Well-
concerned about.
Well, the number for non-net school spending right now, we're standing firm at 19.5.
Correct. Correct. But what I'm saying is that's a budget to be passed. And again, just remember for some of the new members, city council, they have full authority to cut that number. They do. That's their legislative. So we're going to be there on Tuesday, June 18th. If they cut it, they cut it. I mean, that's within their realm. But I guess the only thing is, so we would be passing that 19.5, in essence, in good faith that the cost containment measures are going to keep that number whole.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Clarkson, before we open it up to the committee, do you have any thoughts as well? And thank you very much. Thank you, Trish.
Mayor, I just want to mention on June 18th, that is a regular school committee meeting night, so we'll probably have to work with the city council to change that night. That's our regular school committee meeting.
Might have to take a vote to
Right.
push that, yeah, because
Yes.
Juneteenth, it's federal holiday, we're not meeting on the 19th, so be 17, and then the president wants to meet with the school committee on the 18th, so I concur with that. We'll just have to take a vote of this body to push the 18th. Ms. Clarkson, floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few additional thoughts. Each and every year, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education reviews every city and town's net school spending. And if any community is not meeting those requirements, they get contacted by DESE, and Trish is right. They either have to remedy that and fully fund it or face penalties. So I want to make it clear as we continue these discussions that at least in my tenure here, the city of Brockton has fully funded net school spending every year or has exceeded that funding request. And I think that's important because I don't want Trish's comments to be misconstrued to mean that somehow that important number has been underfunded here in Brockton, because it has not. This report that you just got represents a tremendous amount of work, and the school finance team deserves a tremendous amount of credit for getting us to where we are. I think on the city side, we've been working with Open Architects very closely and working to develop the city's estimate for the budget that the mayor will submit in the coming days. I can tell you we're very, very close. My estimate as of this morning that I shared with both Trish and Dr. Cobbs was $226,700,000. So we're within $100,000 between the school estimate and the city. So that's very good news, and I'm sure we can bridge that gap. I think the non-net school spending is another story, and that's something that will still require a significant amount of work. You know, I know we have spent many months together looking at transportation costs, transportation practices, transportation procurement, and I am not comfortable with a figure of $19.5 million until we understand the steps that the Transportation Department is taking to bring those costs under control, to refine and correct procurement procedures and have some measure of restraint on the explosion of those costs. That doesn't mean that we're at any sort of impasse. It means that, from my perspective, we're continuing to look at ways to use best practices to provide public transportation for the Brockton Public Schools. So the message I would like to convey to you tonight is, as it relates to non-net spending, we're essentially in agreement, and that's very good news. And the budget that the mayor will submit to the city council will likely be identical or very, very close to that amount. Again, I still think we need to do some work on the non-net spending. I think the other issue that we need to discuss that really directly relates to the city's ability to fund both the non-net and the net is finalizing and finishing out fiscal year 24 and understanding how the resources are being allocated, because that resource allocation will have a huge impact on the available funds that the city has to be able to address the needs of the Brockton Public Schools for fiscal year 25. We've been talking for a while, again, about transportation costs and how far they have exceeded estimates, and the need for the city to address that through transferring existing city funds to non-net spending to cover the FY24 transportation costs. And so, to the degree that the city has to come up with additional millions of dollars before June 30th to address those costs, that limits the amount of money that's available next year to address those costs. And so that's why I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done before I can stand before you with any confidence at all and develop a figure of non-net school spending for fiscal year 25. So I give tremendous credit to Trish and her team for the work that's been done to date. I pledge that I will continue to work closely with everyone, but we've got more work to do.
Just point of information, thank you, Ms. Clarkson. Point of information, myself and the Vice Chair and Councilor President Rodriguez, Dr. Cobbs, Trish, Troy, Solicitor Bridges, we do multiple Zooms every single week to talk about this. I was at a mayor's conference with the MMA yesterday. I was with Lieutenant Governor. A&F Secretary was on a Zoom. I was with Sean Cronin. You've heard that name, for Department of Revenue. So all the people I just mentioned on the school side and city side, we're going to be having another Zoom on the 22nd next week with all the state partners led by Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, Secretary Gorkowicz from A&F. So time is of the essence. I do want to thank Trish and Troy and Dr. Cobbs. Everybody's really working together. But we just, Tony and myself and Moses have already gone to the State House. We've already gone to One Beacon. This will be the fourth Zoom with our state folks. So, they want to make sure that we're good for 24 and we're good for 25. And I have actually asked them to help us for 26, 27, 28, and beyond. So just to let you know, we have a regular scheduled meeting next Tuesday, right? So I think between now and Tuesday, we still have some serious work to do to try to figure out cost containment measures, not to deprive the students and staff in classroom. That's not any of us are trying to do. So I'll open it up now if anybody has any questions for Trish or Troy. And again, don't forget TJ's on there as well. I'll start with Mr. Sullivan, please.
Yes, I wanted to thank Trish for all the work you did putting this together. But I have two quick questions. The conference committee, do you have a date when they're going to meet?
No, I don't know that.
Well, the other question, would they usually go with the last figure, or could they add to it?
Oh, the last figure is the final figure. Yes.
Well, the conference committee's got to approve it? Is that what it is?
Yes. The conference committee will look at the previous budgets
Right.
and determine for themselves if they want to maintain it as is or change it positively or negatively.
So that can go either way, positive?
Could go either way.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Doesn't tend, point of information, doesn't tend to go negative when it comes out of the joint committee.
Correct. They usually respect the budget process previous to them, and it's normally right in line with the previous versions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Members of the committee, any other questions? I'll start with Mrs. Sullivan for either Trish, Troy, or TJ.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. That's a tremendous amount of work. Thank you. I was just wondering, so it's the non-net right now that's really in question, Mr. Clarkson?
From my perspective, yes. As I mentioned, on the net school spending, I'm happy to report we're within $87,000 of having an identical figure, and I'm sure the city can be flexible in fully funding it up to that requested amount.
Okay, thank you. And then we feel pretty comfortable that we'll be able to get within that, or we still need to work on it?
I mean, I can only speak from my perspective. I mean, case in point, last week, we voted rightfully so to provide summer camps for community schools. But as you may recall, there was transportation associated with that. And I said we need to pause that because it was $105,000, which is considered non-net transportation, which actually would fall back on the city side. And so that's why I asked respectfully to postpone that until Mr. Clarkson's here. We have to get there. By law, I have to submit a budget. We have to have one either approved or disapproved by the end of the fiscal year by the city council. So we still have a little bit of time. On the city side, I have to go to the printer. I'm supposed to go to the printer by the end of the week so that we can get the books to the city council. On the school side, I believe they print in-house, which saves us some time, but we have to get there. And you know, we're not out of the woods yet. I've actually asked to meet with all the unions next week on the school side and city side. I was directed, as you may recall, to do so by the state folks. You know, it looks like, as if we sit here on the 15th, that we are dodging state intervention in terms of a fiscal control board, which would gut the power of the mayor, gut the power of the school committee, gut the power of the city council. But again, we're not 100% there yet where we are able to say we're going to go present this to the city council. But I just want to caution people, because I sat on the city council for 14 years. They have it within their authority to cut money on the school side and city side. That's their legislative duty. So.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody.
Just to follow on from that, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
To Member Sullivan.
There's a couple of Sullivans. Which one, Mr. Sullivan or Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Yes.
To Mrs. Sullivan.
All right, thank you.
On the city side, we've been also working very, very hard on presenting a balanced budget, which we're required to do by law, which is balanced within existing funds and does not rely on additional state intervention to balance that budget. So it's been extremely difficult. I said today I've been working on municipal budgets for 30 years. This is the most difficult budget on which I've ever worked. But it's balanced. And a big reason for that is that the Department of Revenue did allow us to recertify almost $8 million in free cash that we're able to use to balance this budget. But in order to bring it into balance on the city side, I can tell you we implemented between $15 and $20 million in cuts and reductions. And so in order to get to this $700,000, it was a very sincere effort on the part of the city to be able to meet our requirements, but also meet the city's requirements for public safety and public works and public libraries. And so it was a balancing act, as it is every year. But I do want to give tremendous credit to our budget director, Evan Lacasse, and the finance team on the city side, who have worked very closely with many of the school finance people to get to this point. So it's been a real team effort.
I forgot, Solicitor Megan Bridges has been on the Zoom since day one, so I do want to always acknowledge the city solicitor. She's been an integral part of this. I'm going to open it up now to any other members that have any questions. Ms. Azak, please.
I just want to have a couple questions. So thank you. We appreciate this, breaking this down. Will we be getting the binder like we did in previous years? Last year was the first year we didn't get that. Will we be getting that binder? Because that binder breaks it down per school, per building, staffing, things like that. And that helps us when we're reviewing the budget to see what each location actually needs. So I know last year we didn't have it. We were going to get it eventually, and then things changed. So will we have that binder, or are we just going to get?
I believe we are intending to do the whole binder. I had
Right,
discussed
so-
it with Dr. Cox.
So you'll get the budget book to vote on the budget, and once you do that, it takes longer that's a very detailed book you'll get a copy of it.
Okay, because I mean, we've gotten them every year. Last year was the first year. Not that it's just, I know I cross-reference throughout the year. I always go to it. That's my reference book anytime I need anything. And the other question I have, this might go under transportation budget, but, I came upon an outline from 2020, December 20th of 2020, and it breaks down our transportation plan. There were times that, people thought that, we just created a transportation company. No, we didn't. There was a lot of thought that went into it. And we had the Massachusetts Association of Pupil Transportation came out in February 27th, 28th of 2020. They did an audit. Can we get a copy of that audit? If we don't have it, maybe reach out to the company, get a copy of it. Because for us to be over on our transportation, after seeing the amount of time that was put into this, I'd like to see, where did we go wrong? Where did we veer off the original plan? Sure, Dr. Cox.
So to answer your question regarding the MAP, they call it for short, I reached out to Colleen Cavanaugh, who's the executive director of MAP, and she said that it was actually never completed, the transportation audit. And so I'm engaging with her now to kind of pick back up and do that audit for us. So.
Okay. I mean, that's good to know. I thought it was completed, so that's good to know.
We reached out. We've been going back and forth email for a few months, and actually I sent their contract over to Megan Bridges to review. So we're pretty close to nailing it down.
Because I believe we paid for it, and then COVID hit. We didn't?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know COVID hit. No sooner did the audit complete.
That's when it stopped, when COVID hit. It never completed it.
Because they were here February 27th and 28th, and then the whole world shut down not even 2 weeks later with
Right.
COVID. So, but I mean, reviewing this, and I found it accidentally going through something and reviewing this actual packet, I'd like to see I don't want to say where did we go wrong, because I don't think we did go wrong purchasing our own transportation company or creating it, but I think where did we veer off? Let's take a look at the original plan and see what happened.
Well, I think I can answer part of that, Joyce, anyways, that if you look at that plan, there really was it didn't address private transportation. The out-of-district private transportation in district, we really focused on yellow buses, and that's where we really didn't encompass the whole scope of the work.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Gomes, followed by Mr. Vega, please.
I also wanted to say thank you for all the time and dedication you guys put into this. It certainly is a lot of work. It's a lump sum of money, and you coming in new, so we really appreciate that. One of the points goes back to what Ms. Isaac just said, is if we could get a detailed breakdown by schools, how much they're getting allocated to each, and what's going to be used for under each line item, that would be good. I know from past practices, it was a lump sum put together. We don't know how much each school had allocated to them. So that makes it confusing. Money can go around without a proper management. The other thing, I know you said this is up to the most recent work you guys have done. Is there anything that you guys are still working on that is not incorporated into this budget?
I don't believe there is. The cabinet and I have met a few times, making sure that we've included everything. Again, I'm pretty comfortable that we've included everything. We're still tweaking a few of the numbers for some of the departments, but I think I'm comfortable saying that we've touched on every budget, and I don't know if you guys would like to give your thoughts on that, how you feel about that.
So I feel comfortable with the budget, again, that Trish put out regarding the staff and the salaries and the operational expenses. I'm concerned a little bit about, but that's really 24 budget, not 25. Some of the contractual obligations that need to be settled for contractors, literally contractors that we need to pay. So that's a concern, but again, that's 24, not 25. And hopefully they don't carry over into 25 when we finally reach some settlements or whatever happens to those.
Thank you. And also, I'll second what Ms. Azak just said. If we could get a breakdown of the transportation budget, that would be very helpful. Also, I would love to see a breakdown of the Schedule 19 as well. Not the total amount, but what allocation to each service that will be provided, if that's possible.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just point of information, Council President has also indicated he's reiterated it to the Vice Chair and myself, but he reiterated it on a Zoom today as well. He is also going to do something different. We're having one dedicated night for schools, which is completely different in the history of Brockton, but it's the right thing. He also is going to be asking other BPS employees to appear that night. He's working with Dr. Cobbs to come up with a list, but he, again, that's something that hasn't happened in the past, but it kind of piggybacks with what you just said, Mr. Gomes, in terms of different schools, different costs associated with that and stuff like that. So it's just point of information. Any other questions for either Trish or Troy at this time, Mr. Vega?
Again, like everyone said, I appreciate the work. You guys mathed it really hard. But Troy, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're not prepared to put a stamp on the non-net spending. And if I'm hearing correctly, the transportation is a big question mark within that.
Yes, and I think that's based on the challenges that we've seen this year.
Right.
And the exploding costs. And so I think that more work needs to be done to rein in those costs.
And if I'm understanding correctly, Dr. Cobb said like part of that explosion, if not the bulk of it, are these private.
Typically are out of district transportations and even at the in-district special education door-to-door transportations is a big.
It's like McKinney-Vento too for our homeless students
That's
and families, right? So that's all. So and then when I think about what Ms. Asak said about in 2020, the committee thought like what benchmarks are we using differently to anticipate the growing numbers within those two populations, our special ed population as well as our McKinney-Vento population? Like, are we using different benchmarks so we can hit a more accurate assessment of the need?
So this may, Mr. Vega, may have been before you joined the committee, but I presented this committee a few months ago a listing of typical spending for transportation for a month. And at the time, the cost for private transportation was $1 million a month. Underlying those costs, though, was a pretty wide range of fee structures and contracts for that transportation. So we've had extensive discussions since that time to look at ways that the school department can change the way it does that business to bring those costs down and to control the costs at the commencement of a contract and not try to control them after the contract has been executed. And so that alone, that $1 million a month, right, is a significant amount of money. We can all do the math in our heads. So it's that kind of cost containment that I believe needs to occur before we can validate and before I can understand the numbers behind $19.5 million. Our current figure that's in the city's budget and the recommendation for the city council is $18 million. So that's a $7 million increase over what was appropriated this year. Understanding that when we appropriated that $11 million, we had discussions that it may not be enough, but we said, prove how those costs are, prove to us that you need more, and we'll go back and ask for more. So my thought on $18 million is that provides a significant, if not a complete, opportunity to provide transportation. And if during the year those cost containment measures don't work and the school department is unable to bring those costs under control, but I'm very confident that they will, then at that point, we can certainly appropriate more money. But given the challenges in that transportation paradigm in the last year, given how those costs have been far greater than anticipated, it just doesn't make sense to me to then fund something at a higher level when we all know and believe that we can fund it at a lesser level. So net school spending, we all agree on. As I said in my previous comments, the city has either met or exceeded that net school spending every year. But I think because the city is wholly responsible for those transportation costs, then we need to work together to do the best job that we can to keep those costs under control. And I believe at this point that $18 million is a very reasonable and a very collaborative figure that gives us the opportunity to run the transportation department for perhaps the whole year, but certainly most of it, and then reassess it and have a discussion about whether or not we need more money.
And I'm sorry, I'm often a dunce with this kind of stuff, but I hear so one measure that we can use is try and control those contract costs. But like, what are we anticipating in the way of the population that by law we have to transport? So we can bring those costs down, but if this goes up, we're going to end up in the same place that we're at now. Like what are the how do we know how many students and families we're going to serve?
Let me try to take a stab at that with some experience not only here in Brockton, but in other communities, and certainly defer to Dr. Cobbs. But you ask an excellent and insightful question that's being asked in virtually every community in the Commonwealth right now. Certainly the majority of them, right? We hear every day about other communities, and Weymouth and Braintree and small towns. The one where I used to work in Hanover that is looking for a $6 million override because, and a big driver of those costs is out-of-district sped tuition costs and out-of-district sped transportation costs. So I think the challenge is the unpredictability of those numbers, because when you do a good job, as Brockton does, when you do an exemplary job, as Brockton does, in providing support services to those students, then sometimes that results in a rise in the number of students who arrive and need services. So it's a very difficult number to predict. And then because of the volatility of those numbers, it's difficult to adequately fund because you never really know what those costs are going to be. Which is why I believe a more conservative funding strategy is more responsible, because it forces us to reassess throughout the year and then refund if necessary. But I'll defer to Dr. Cobbs as well.
So our multilingual population, the Kenny-Vento population, it is growing by about 200 students per month. So if you do the math and you extrapolate that out to next school year, I can't see how we can say we're going to spend less money on transportation. It makes no sense. So we have to build those costs in, and we have to be prepared for that, because Brockton, as Troy said, is a target city that multiple agencies send students to Brockton because we do have the services, the multilingual services, the BMZ services, the mental health services. We do have that safety net, so it's a target destination. People come here when they're homeless. They come here as newcomers. They get enrolled in schools, and then they get placed out of the district for shelter, and we're responsible for them. So that won't change.
And I don't know if this is a question for the mayor or not. And I'm gonna lose the name, but some members of the committee have been involved with mask and looking at what's going on the Hill, the large budgets being worked out, and there are amendments that are on there that seem to speak specifically to transportation, to special ed, to the populations that we're talking about. Right. Is that something that happens on the city side to make a case for Brockton in terms of those amendments? Because they would have a tremendous effect on.
That's why I drove to Westboro yesterday and met with Lieutenant Governor. There's 47 mayors in the Commonwealth. There was 4 of us there in person. Mayor from Medford, mayor from a couple others on Zoom. So that's what we're articulating right now, especially the gateway communities. We're seeing a larger influx of people coming here. Brockton's always been a welcoming, inclusive city. That's what the whole essence of Brockton is, immigration coming here and for a better life. So it was a conversation I had, and we'll have it again on the 22nd, the vice chair, myself, and Dr. Cobbs, when we have a captured audience as well. Vice Chair, please.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on the Schedule 19, the last cabinet meeting that I attended, those numbers that TJ presented, I don't know if anything changed, if you can educate me on this. My understanding at that meeting was that the school district was only responsible for $2 million of that Schedule 19. I just want to know how we got to that $4 million. And then also when the budget book is presented to the committee to vote for an actual budget, that needs to be implicated in that budget book, what those Schedule 19 costs are, because we have to factor those in. I would love to see from 2020 to now what those costs were and how did we get to that point. So that's one of my questions with the Schedule 19 being implemented into the budget book, because that is a cost for the district. The other piece is our Medicare reimbursement. I know the council just took in $450,000. So that's a Medicare reimbursement that's for the school district, and correct me if I'm wrong. So that process is basically initiated by the school district in order to get those reimbursements. It makes sense that the school district is doing all the legwork. Those monies are coming back. Where did those funds go? Shouldn't that be coming back to the school district? I'm just trying to understand this, because this isn't just like and I believe it's in the millions, so I'm just trying to understand, and the committee needs to understand, and the community, is that we have this Medicare reimbursement that comes because the school district, I don't know if anybody from the cabinet wants to speak, or Trish, where do those funds go when it comes back to the city? Because obviously the council has to take that money back, but my understanding is the school district is putting in those paperwork to get those Medicare reimbursement. It's an expense on the school side where we are in a deficit and we need every penny that we can get. That $450K that the council just approved, where does that money go?
Just point of information, any money that comes back under Mass General Law has to go into the account on the city side. That's required by law.
Yeah, to clarify on
It's
that.
into the general fund.
To clarify on that, that Medicare line that we asked the city council to transfer money to is actually the Medicare tax. That funds, it's a 1 3/4 or less than 2% tax. It's a payroll tax that the city actually pays for the city employees. And so we funded it this year at just slightly over $4 million, I believe. And because there were lots of retroactive payments for the settlement of union contracts and other costs, we still have to pay that payroll tax. So that was actually a transfer within the treasurer's budget to fully fund that payroll tax. Although it's called Medicare in the budget, it's known colloquially as the Medicare tax. That expenditure was unrelated to any Medicare reimbursements.
So the Medicaid that the school district, that's only for staff? Doesn't that involve, Trish, I don't know if you want to chime in. I'm just trying to understand this more clearly.
So there are two different things. Medicare, as Mr. Clarkson mentioned, might have been a Medicare tax reimbursement or something. I'm not familiar with the $450,000 that you're talking about, but Medicare tax is one thing. Medicaid reimbursement is another thing. Medicaid reimbursement is when the school department spends money on our students in the special education area. The services that we provide to the students, whether they're outside consulting services or whether they're provided in-house by our staff, on a quarterly basis, we let our vendor who processes our Medicaid, we tell them how much the school has spent on those student services. services for their needs from the vendors or from our staff. That then goes into the report that we send them on a quarterly basis, goes into, forget the name of the department, up at the state, and they calculate how much they're going to reimburse the city for the costs that the school spent. Don't forget, what the school spends is the city's money. So when Medicaid gets reimbursed, it goes, by law, it has to go back to the city side. And I do believe it's a few $1,000,000 a year, because I saw a calculation once too, and I thought, oh, that was a pretty large number. But the city chooses what it does with that Medicaid reimbursement. So Medicare and Medicaid are two different things.
So, yeah, that's what I'm alluding to. So that's through the SPED. So that number's in the millions. So, but that's, in your professional opinion, shouldn't that money be reallocated to the school district? Because obviously the figures that we have, we need a lot more than that to
Right.
educate. So I'm just trying.
Some districts have an agreement between the cities and towns and the schools where they do give a portion of it back to the school department, 100%, a portion of that. Some don't give any of it back. So it's how you look at it. If the city or town side keeps it, then it goes to the general fund, and they are the source of our budget in the first place. You see what I mean? So whether they give it back to us directly or whether it goes to them and they're directly funding the school budget, you know, it's a decision that every district makes.
And so by law, we have to submit that report anyway.
Oh, we have to submit well, you don't have to submit the report, then you wouldn't get anything
So if we
back.
don't do that report, then the city doesn't get that reimbursement, correct?
That's correct. The city wouldn't get the reimbursement, but just another thing that is important is that it costs us about $150,000 a year. So the school department lays out $150,000 a year for our vendor to process the Medicaid payment. So it would be nice to get reimbursed that $150,000. Right now, it's considered a cost on the special ed budget. We don't get reimbursed for that $150,000 that we have to pay to have someone process that.
So, 100, so that's an agreement that this body needs to take up. I know on the city side, receiving those funds, when I look at it quarterly, like what does that equate to? It's in the millions. This is, as we can say, like a tough time, overall for the whole city. But I think, where we are and where we have to be as an urban community to make sure that, we have proper funding and we have teachers in the classroom to support our students, I think there needs to be a deeper conversation regarding these reimbursements and what it really looks like and what to support the schools. So I think we have to have a deeper conversation and seeing what we can recoup, come to some type of agreement, because Schedule 19 is an agreement. So I think these Medicare reimbursements should be an agreement as well. And then the other piece, I know we have to vote on our budget. I know Council President Rodriguez wants certain department heads. I think on the school side, before that comes to that point, once we have our budget book, I know Dr. Cobbs is working on that plan and having those department heads come before this body to present the budget and get it approved, and hopefully we get more funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Mr. Plant, TJ, just to follow up on Vice Chair Rodriguez, in your experience in Springfield and some of the other municipalities that you're working on, have you seen what Tony just articulated? Is that something that, I don't have any problem considering anything. I mean, we need to consider, we need to work together, but is that 150 grand, is that a contract fee? Like, what's that 150 grand?
Yes.
It's a contract fee?
Yes.
Maybe we put it out and see if we get a lot lower than 150 grand. TJ, what are your thoughts on that?
So there's a few thoughts. Trish, you did a great job summarizing the Medicaid reimbursement process. All revenue does belong to the city's general fund unless otherwise appropriated. There's been a number, Trish mentioned it, there's been a number of ways communities have approached it. Most net school spending communities keep it as a way to help meet net school spending and the expenses of the school department. Other communities have given it back to the school department. Many of those are above net school spending communities, so they have the revenue to provide additional money to those districts. But the important thing, one thing I would argue is that the $150,000 expense should be moved over to the city's, either the finance department or the city auditor's department, since they're realizing the revenue. That is where a lot of communities have done, is shifted over to where the revenue is going and the expense. I know Springfield did it when we moved from Public Consulting Group to UMass Medical, who did it for us. I'm not sure who does it for Brockton. And then enter into a negotiation and/or a conversation regarding what makes sense for Brockton. And the random moment in time studies are a fair amount of work, and the way to get the data that they need to calculate the amount that the district's generating and the city's getting in terms of Medicaid revenue. So there's a lot of moving pieces to that.
Thank you. Vice Chair, follow up?
Just to follow, Trish, not to put more work on you, I know you and the team been working very hard and long hours with Dr. Cobbs. Is it possible for you to, give us a breakdown by year what those reimbursements were? Not at this moment, but
I cannot,
later.
because that's revenue that goes into a city account, and I don't have access to city accounts in Munis. I only have access to the school accounts.
So when we, I just want to understand this. So when the school district, I'm not sure who actually has that task of submitting the pay. I'm just assuming it's coming out of Dr. LeBois' office. I'm just assuming.
Along with the finance office.
So once they submit those reimbursements, they should know they don't know what the dollar amount is coming back, or they just submit it and they say, oh, this is.
Correct, because once it goes to the firm that we hired, they go through and audit all of the costs that we've submitted. So we may submit something and they may come back and say, oh, no, that's disallowable. So we don't know. We may submit a $2 million expenditure for that quarter. They may come back and say only 1.2 million of it is eligible to be reimbursed. So we don't know till after they're done with the audit. And then again, like I said, we don't know because we never see the cost. We never see the reimbursement.
I need to step in here, though. The inference is unfortunate, that somehow the information is not available. In the spirit of collaboration and cooperation, I host a meeting in my office every week, and invite the school finance people over, and we have conversations, and I've done it for years. At no time has that information been requested, and had it been requested, it would have been provided immediately. So yes, it's true that the school finance office doesn't have access to city munis accounts, but let me be crystal clear. There is no time in my tenure here where we've not provided everything that we've ever been asked and more, because we have tried to create a spirit of cooperation. So I don't want the school committee to think that because members of the school business office don't have access to city accounts in Munis, that information is somehow not available, because that's simply not true.
No, I'm not referencing that. This is information that's relative to me with the reimbursement. So I want to know, as a committee member, how much money has come in, if that's your office that can decipher that, just to show me, like, the past 3 years. I'm not saying that if the committee knows about, they have the right to know that this is what's coming in.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying whatever the law that requires that it goes by, it's accepted by the city council. But if, I'll be quite frank with you, if I know that this body can request a portion of those funds, I'm going to be the strongest advocate for that, to request the funds, because I would never put a price tag on education. There's not enough money. You cannot put a price tag on education. We put a price tag on it because the state has a formula, but you can't put a price tag on education. We can come with this 227. I'm pretty sure if we have 400 million, the school district will find ways of spending that 400 million appropriately to make sure that we educate the kids, because there's not enough support services for our students. So that's where I want to know exactly what this number is entailed, because it's the school district that's doing the legwork to make sure that these reimbursements come in, but it's a city as well, so I understand. If I could get that information, what that was for the past 3 years, that would be appreciated.
We'll get it for all the committee members. Before I go around, TJ, Mr. Plant, did you have any, Trish and Troy expressed 25. I didn't know if you had any comments on 25. I share the same sentiments as Dr. Cobb's 24. We're almost there. I believe we're going to get through there. There are some outstanding contracts that need to be either negotiated or settled or something, right? But what are some of your thoughts on 25 going into our meeting we have with the state again on the 22nd next week?
Yeah, so I mean, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the big part, the big takeaway from all this is, I mean, everyone's referenced the amount of work and the yeoman's work that's gone into pulling the FY25 budget together. It's an initial budget that's being presented tonight. It's a plan. It's the best thinking that has happened in BPS in the city as of now. It's an iterative process, so it's going to change as House Ways and Means, Senate Ways and Means, or House Final, Senate Final, and now it's going to be going to conference committee. That should hopefully come out in June. That we'll know the final number. The House and Senate numbers, I think, are identical. So I think that's a good number to start to even update for another budget meeting. But once the key part of it is once the budget is adopted, is implementing it and monitoring it and making sure that it is that you implement with fidelity and that you have the tools in place to say, okay, we budgeted X, we now need to do Y to get there. And if there are any variances, you communicate that with the stakeholders. That's the school committee, that's the city council, that's the public, that's department head, that's other key folks within the city that just might need to know. Potentially it's the delegation, but just being able to explain all the variances. And I think that lack of information is because some of the, frustration that everyone's been feeling all around. But this is a good budget, a good start to the budget. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. But the key is once July 1st hits, we can't take our foot off the gas and let it go. And it just needs to be monitored monthly. And I believe that's the commitment that Trish and her team and our team have made to assist, making sure that we don't get into this situation again.
Thank you, Mr. Plant. I'm going to open it up again. Ms. Oliver, please, followed by Mr. Sullivan.
Trish, thank you for all the work you've done and also the finance team. It's not so much an attack. I think that we're trying to communicate with the finance and also the city. It's just that a lot of things that we're finding out from a third person. Anything that we're paying $150,000 for a vendor to do this work, and we're getting from the state $2 million. And unless somebody told us that this is happening, we would not know. So I think what we're asking out of respect for this body is moving forward is to be transparent. We want to know the work that we're doing, we're paying as a school district, we're taking money out of our funds that we're supposed to be educating students, and then what reimbursement are we getting from the state that's not coming back to us? It's not a personal attack on anybody, it's just, let's be transparent, what a reimbursement we're getting, where it's going, and who's paying for it. That's all we're asking for. We're not personal attacking anybody, but moving forward, I think we need to be more transparent, what's coming back from the state and where it's going. That's all we're asking for. We don't want to hear from a third person, by the way, do you know this is coming in, but we're not getting it, and make us look like we're foolish, like we don't know what's going on. So before that happens, I want to speak to the finance department, I want to speak to Trish, I want to speak to Troy. Let us know what's going on so we don't look like idiots in front of other people telling us what's going on with this money. Because when we know, be like, oh yeah, I can better educate everybody what's happening. That's all we're asking for.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Mr. Sullivan, I'm sorry, I couldn't remember who I asked. Mr. Sullivan, please.
Trish, the last time we talked, we were talking about the grants. You were still working on 12 of them? Has
Yes.
that been completed?
We're still working on the grants, and I know I did tell you I would have it for you today, but we've just got so busy putting the FY25 budget together, so I promise you it's going to be on Tuesday's school committee. So
Okay.
we're still working on grants, moving funds around. So you have to realize that, the staff that we have in the finance office have other tasks to do as well.
Right.
And that are critical. So it's not like we have myself or one person strictly dedicated to doing this type of work. We're spread so thin, and we're putting out fires every day. So we are, like I said, we're chipping away at the grants day by day.
I was just wondering if you think there's a lot of money to be paid back out
No.
of that? Or just a small amount?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Sullivan. Ms. Azak, followed by, go on Ms. Azak first.
Thank you, Trish. Question, and I completely understand, because every time I've reached out, you've always been accommodating. So I understand, not only are you guys shorthanded in that department, it's budget season, we're going through a lot of stuff the past few months. Is it too much to ask whatever you're going to review with us on Tuesday? Could we get it in our Friday packets so we have time to review it, get our questions ready? Is it going to, that's the only thing I ask. Sometimes it's hard when we get it the night of the meeting.
Right.
To, sometimes I'm sure I'll be calling you with some questions and stuff, but it just helps us review it. That's the
Yes.
only thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
If it's not too much, I know you guys are preparing so much. If we could have it in Friday's packet, I know I'd appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's the plan.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Azak. Any additional comments or thoughts at this time? We can move on to the agenda. We'll go back to 6 because we had taken 7 out of order. Update from TJ Plan Open Architects. Mr. Plan, is there anything else you want to offer at this time?
Yeah, I just would like to do a quick update, and I'll be
Sure.
very brief. The update actually is going to be on fiscal 24 and trying to finish out balancing fiscal 24. I know Dr. Cobbs mentioned that that's kind of the thing has him, the top priority for him is to make sure that we're finishing fiscal 24 without a deficit. So right now, by way of update, you all have seen the list, and I can show it to you if you need to, the list of items that have been identified in terms of revenue to offset the $19 to $25 million deficit. I can show that and go through it if we need to, but the key part to it is right now we are working on updating the projection to see if the numbers have changed, gone up or gone down, and then we have a plan to address their deficit, and I should have an update hopefully by next Tuesday's meeting to walk through with the committee of where we think we're at, and then all the steps. Like we know we've used McKinney-Vento revenue to offset some McKinney-Vento expenses. We know circuit breaker 7 million is there. We know ESSER 5.1, Trish is in the middle of amending that to address 5.1, and we know Dr. Cobbs and the cabinet have identified 10 million that has been frozen and kind of set aside in case it's needed. So there's a whole lot of things happening, and we are very close to having the game plan to present to this body hopefully next week.
Thank you, TJ. So that will be for next Tuesday, regular scheduled on the 21st, and then we'll piggyback on the next day with the state folks and share those same information. Any questions for Mr. Plan at this time? Seeing none, TJ, thank you very much. Have a good evening. We'll go back on to Agenda 8. We did take A already, and that did pass unanimously. Now we have B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. So B are job postings, anticipated positions.
So, Mayor, that's essentially just, we're just making sure that we have the school committee blessing to post the job ads tomorrow, but that you voted on already for the fill positions.
Dr. Cobbs, that was what Trish said, the 4.7 million?
For 5.2, yeah, 4.7, 5.2, right, yes.
Is that right, Trish? I'm sorry.
5.2. That's what you voted on, 5.
That's what you had asked about, right? Yeah, okay. Any comments or questions on that? Vice Chair, please.
We got, is that the list that we was provided the last meeting?
Yes.
This is just me. I know we took a vote to fill those positions. I'll be more comfortable if those positions are only geared towards the classroom versus support, like custodials and any of those other positions. Because we don't know what the future looks like for us the following year. I don't want to come back to where, we have this number for FY 25, and then we're not there. I pray that we are, and then we're laying people off per se. So I just want to make sure that we're not putting in positions that can be questionable on the next year's budget. Because, this isn't just a FY 25, this is a 26, 27, as you know, with our meetings that we have. So I just need to feel a little bit more comfortable with that.
So to address that, so there are several custodial positions open or facilities, outside grounds. Actually, I think there's 21 the last time I talked to Ken Thompson. The only ones that we will fill are the senior custodian positions that are retiring. We have to have a senior custodian in a building, and that person will come up through the ranks from one of the current custodial positions, which we will probably not backfill.
So those are just internal positions anyway, promotions.
Exactly. They're not new positions. We're not interviewing any new outside people. Somebody moves up, and we'll cover at least this year for that person that moved up.
Okay. I'm confident with that. The other piece I know we're going to be constructing the budget is.
I'm sorry, just the other thing on the other positions, non-classroom positions, or the 6 school police officers that we're down quite a number, so we have to put those positions for safety. Absolutely.
No, I agree with that. I just, certain positions that I looked at and I said, can we kind of hold off?
There's a number of positions we're not going to fill right now. The other departments will have to, we'll get through the year with, but to defer to classroom teachers, obviously, first.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Again, this is a vote that was taken last week. Trish or Troy, did you have any thoughts on this at all?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned in my earlier remarks, I think we're very, very close on the net school spending number, but I agree with the sentiment expressed by the Vice Chair. I think being certain that the requested positions match the funding is always a good practice, and so I think it's prudent and a good way to go.
Thank you, Troy.
So again, these positions, these fills are not new positions. These are positions that we have somebody in the position right now, for the most part, either, like Trish said already, a paraprofessional, a long-term sub, or a daily sub filling those positions. So what you voted on is a difference between the salaries of a highly qualified master's teacher and not a para or a substitute teacher.
Thank you for the clarifier, Dr. Cobbs. Any other questions or comments relative to that matter? I mean, we already took a vote on it, so I don't believe, Attorney Spotterford, we would need to take another vote. We already voted on it last week.
No, just wanted to let you know, again, that we'll post those positions tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Transportation budget, which is 8C at this time, please.
So the transportation budget, again, and I know there's some disagreement on what the transportation budget is, but part of that $18 million that for transportation, 18.7, is the inclusive of leasing the buses and bringing that transportation, door-to-door transportation back in-house. And that's part of the cost, savings measure that we'll implement to bring down the private transportation cost, which again is a huge factor in the transportation. So I just want to make sure, again, we've talked about it, but I just want to make sure that understand that that's the part of the transportation budget and kind of move forward on that.
And then also the additional bus drivers would have a dollar amount attributed to them as well.
Right, it's inclusive in that
It's included in
18 million,
that?
yes.
Any questions? Ms. Azak, please.
Do we have the numbers for leasing and purchasing? I know you went over them, but do we have something for tonight?
I
if we're
gave you
gonna
that
be voting?
printout a couple of meetings back. We were at the JR room. I gave it to everybody, so it hasn't changed.
But if we're going to vote on something tonight, do we have any numbers?
Well, I can give you the general number. The total lease cost for all of the new vehicles is about, I think, $432,000, and we normally budget $350,000 anyway for new vehicles, so it's a difference of about $82,000.
Ms. Azak, I'm not going to actually entertain a motion to vote on this
Oh,
tonight.
good, okay.
I'm not on this matter because, again, we're going to be meeting this is a special, but we're going to be meeting next Tuesday. I think we have to look at some other variables. I think Trish and Troy could look at it with Dr. Cobbs. So there's the cost to lease versus the cost to purchase, right? Then there's the gas, cost of gas for all these new vehicles. And again, the employee costs relative to this, plus their insurance, plus their bennies. So I think there's some things we need to really look at before we take a collective vote. I thought tonight would be discussion on this. Give us a little bit more time as a committee to get some information before next Tuesday.
So we did. I'll give you those again.
Yep.
We gave you that information on the transportation balance sheet as well as a presentation for the transportation.
No, thank you. I misunderstood. I thought a vote was expected this evening. So that would help. And actually, back to what I referenced earlier, that was a 10-year plan when we purchased our buses. So I'd like to compare it,
Yeah, I'll send you the presentation again. Not a problem.
that's fine.
I'll have another hard copy in your packet for next week.
Thank you. Because I look at purchasing as long-term, and we can always turn around and resell them, and that was the original plan. So I'd like to look at those numbers closely.
We'll go through it again.
And then when we do that, I'm just curious to see. And I know our numbers went up with the sped. I know with the one-on-one, the door-to-door, actually, the door-to-door transportation. I'm just curious to see. Do we have those numbers to see how did we not project this? Like how did they just skyrocket? I'd like to see what they were, and I know we're getting more and more,
right?
But there's got to be some kind of an answer. I mean, because originally, us owning the transportation company, we were supposed to just kind of slowly get away from that, and it was just going to be a full service, for our students and for those that need the door-to-door. So it just doesn't make sense that we're spending so much on the door-to-door. So I'd like to see if we have that projection. This is where we started off before we had our transportation company, and this is where we are.
So, you all set?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it just doesn't, to me, I want to see, this
Well,
is where we were in 20.
I'd like to address that if you don't mind.
Sure,
So
go ahead.
again, part of the problem again was, the information that you received and started for transportation was primarily about the yellow buses. We were always transporting door to door and out of district students, but that came out of the special education department and out of the budget. And it also came out of the Title I McKinney-Vento office, so they were separate offices and worked in silos. So there was never a real, under one roof, all of those private transportation costs, which were not included in the original pro forma for the transportation department. That's why it really didn't change. I mean, of course they went up because we have more influx of students that need to service it, but it was always there. And you just never were presented with it in the startup for the transportation department.
Okay, just curious, I'd like to see the number from 2020 to 2024.
Yeah.
The door-to-door, what did they increase? And that way it helps us, because it's going to help us when we're looking at our numbers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've gone up, for a number of reasons, but the cost was always there. And we always had those vendors.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Azak. Mr. Gomes, followed by Mr. Vega, please.
Oh, actually, mine can wait. I just noticed there's the transportation audit update. I was going to ask about that, but I can't wait.
I'm sorry?
I was going to ask about the audit, but I see it.
Yeah, we just talked about that a little bit earlier. We're pretty close to signing the contract. We just had to work out a couple of legal things with the.
So it's not underway yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Because what the discussion was, it was the same company had started it just before the pandemic in 2020, but when the pandemic hit, it stopped. It was never completed. So we're going back to that same organization to work with it, start it again, essentially. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. Thank you.
Wait, I don't know if this
Mr. Vega?
I'm sorry. I don't know if this is connected to that, but within that audit, right, that audit is focused on the routes themselves?
Everything. Yeah.
Okay. Because in a previous conversation, we had talked we had talked about a situation where if we were providing door-to-door service and the bus driver reached a home and that student was sick or not coming to school for whatever reason, that we should be paying half the amount for that particular ride. Is that's not right? Am I wrong?
No, that's correct. They get paid for the route. They get paid for the time on the road.
Whether
for the route.
or not. Okay, the child's in attendance. Okay.
And they can't control for whether the student gets on the bus or not. It's sick that day or not home or got a ride. But, we still have to pay the driver and pay the vendor. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Vega, thank you. Any additional questions relative to this matter? Mr. Vice Chair, please.
Thank you. This is my thoughts on this. I know I've had a conversation with Dr. Cobbs. I think when it comes to purchasing additional fleets for the transportation department, I think, my opinion, that it's premature, knowing that we're going to purchase these vehicles or leasing these vehicles, not having transportation audit done prior. We have 100 plus vehicles. Maybe that audit, or however we call it, can come back and say you guys have more buses than you need because X, Y, Z. We don't know how that audit's going to be of the transportation department. They can come back and say you don't have enough and you have to get more. The other piece is, no matter what we set the transportation budget at, if it's, we cut costs and we get it to 15 or 18, I honestly see it growing beyond whatever number we set it at. And the reason why I stand by those comments is that we're seeing an influx of migrants and whatever category you want to put them in coming into the city. And these people are not coming to the city of Brockton with their apartments or they're owning their homes. They're, doubling, tripling up in their families' house. It's going to come to a point where they're going to end up in a shelter, and we are going to be legally responsible for transporting these students to our schools. So, and I think that number is going to jump a lot because we're averaging close to 200 students a month. So just take into account that if you just get 200 students that go into homeless, we still have to transport them. So I want to be wrong, but I see it. I'm trying to.
Yeah, based on the numbers, the way they're increasing, absolutely right. So it makes sense for us at this point in time to increase capacity, but increase capacity in such a way that we have better control of it by leasing and not purchasing more buses. And there's nothing to say if the audit comes out and says, you have 20 buses too many, we can't sell them or we trade them in. It's not, we're locked into them because we'll always find people to buy the buses. But as far as the number of buses that we have and having the audit first, just as with the cabinet, we've spent months and months on working out these different, the budgets and moves and different things. I've done the same thing with the transportation department, and I believe and trust in the experts in transportation that do the routes and understand how we have to move students. People comment, we see a bus go by and there's only a few students in it. Well, you don't know if that bus has already dropped off many students or students didn't show up that day or were sick, or we schedule the buses and the routes to fill as much capacity as we can. So you can't always control for how many students will be on a bus at any given time. But you're right, we have to. The audit will help, but I rely on the expertise of the transportation department. They've been doing this for many years. Those are the ones that did all the routes for the special ed department and McKinney-Vento, the Title I department. So they have some expertise and experience there with our students in that city. And I also agree with you that you're right. The McKinney-Vento will continue to increase. The influx of the newcomers will increase, and we will need the capacity to do that. And it's not going to be we won't build a capacity overnight or within a month. We have to plan now for this influx and increase in capacity.
I agree.
Thank you, Ms. Vice Chair. Ms. Azak, followed by Ms. Oliver, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Oliver, and then,
Do we have?
this feels like it's midnight, doesn't it?
It does feel like it.
Jesus.
Getting
Do we
there.
have a contract with the audit company already?
I'm sorry?
Do we have a contract?
No, like I just mentioned earlier, we're finalizing it because we had to go, every contract that I get from anywhere, I send it to the legal department across the street to Megan and Kayla to review, and then the lawyers talk back and forth and hash out the differences. So there was only one more point that we had to take care of, but I think we're ready to sign it pretty soon.
What is the price on that?
I'm sorry?
What is the cost? What's going to be the cost?
This particular one is $9,500. Well, I've had prices from $180,000 to almost $10,000 to back to the map that you mentioned, that organization, about $9,500.
That's very good. Is this coming from out of the funds we have now, from FY
Yes.
'24?
Yeah, it'll be out of 24 funds.
Thank you.
Before I open it up, go back to Ms. Azak. Would any members that didn't speak have anything that they want to say at this time? I'll go back to you, Ms. Azak, please.
Thank you. Actually, that just, I have another question after hearing Ms. Oliver. So that's got to come before the committee as far as us approving the audit company. So if we can have that, just so we can see, I want to see what they're outlining. What are they going to do as far as the audit?
I'll bring it.
As far as the committee, and we can, we can do that. And then my other comment is I know for years, Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan can probably remember as well, we've always talked about going back to neighborhood schools. Anytime we ran into issues with transportation, we talked about that being an option, and that's going to be an option. If we were to do that, we'd have to do that. It's going to take at least a few years. If you have some of the students in elementary, middle school not so much, but I mean high school, things like that, I think that would also help us because we have some students that are all across town
Right. Well,
going to different schools. But now that we have the honors programs at the middle schools, we have more programs at more of the schools. And I think years ago it was because we were limited. Like the TAG program was only at certain schools, and that's why kids went to certain schools. But if we can just maybe look at that, just look at how many students go out of their neighborhood area, out of their neighborhood school, and we provide busing. I know that's something that was always brought up over the years as far as anytime transportation and our busing costs. I mean, this isn't the first time our busing costs came up over the years, but that could be an option. I just remember growing up in the Brookfield area, you always knew this is the elementary school, this is my middle school, this is the high school. You knew exactly where you were going to go. I have students in my district that are in Ward 5, Ward 7, Ward 4, Ward 3, Ward 2, Ward 1. They're all over. And it just, that might be an option we can probably discuss. But I just know, I'm not sure if Mr. and Ms. Sullivan want to chime in, but it's something we've always talked about. Mr. Minicello always talked about it. Mr. D'Agostino, we always, anytime we had an issue with, because we have so many bus routes in, to look at the busing. Anyone want to?
Okay, you done? Can I answer now?
Sullivan, any
So,
thoughts?
to address that, Joyce, you're absolutely right. We are looking at that as a cabinet. We've been working on that simultaneously with everything else, the budgets, and right now we're proposing to you school moves, but we'll be proposing to you pretty soon a lot of programmatic moves, for students and classroom moves, the changes to realign some of the. For some of the different things, the honors academies, the launch academies, and the vertical articulation of different academic strains as well. So we're working on that. We're finalizing it, and we'll be presenting that to you. But we wanted to get these moves done first and get started in the school year first, and then introduce those moves.
Mr. Sullivan, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer Ms. Azak. Over the years, we have talked about that, as kids walking to school in their neighborhood schools, and was always justified with the programs. In other words, the tag program was at D'Angelo, the tag program was at the Bluff, so the kids had to go there. They had to bus them there. The cost of it was always justified. You know, we took it as, yes, we have to send the kids there because the talented and gifted program was moved. Now, it's a little different because we have the honors program in every middle school. So she's right. We should be talking about the cost. The busing
Again,
these kids.
we're aware of it, and we're working on it, and again, you know.
I just wanted to
Too
answer
many
her.
changes too soon, you know, this is a huge shake-up again, moving schools. It's a restructuring of a lot of the schools, like the high school leadership and administration that we've done last year and somewhat this year, so we're trying to be cognizant of that and make sure that we implement these things with, you know, in the timing that makes sense and the needs of the community as well, so. We consciously decided not to try to implement that as well this summer and get into the school year and get settled and then bring it to the committee to discuss.
Okay. Any other questions or comments at this time relative to this agenda matter? We'll move on then. The next one is D, which is facility moves. I just wanted to report back to the committee. As per our conversation last week, did speak to the solicitor. She was on a Zoom today with myself and Dr. Cobbs and Trish and Troy. She's reiterated again that any leases that have been done, we had talked about potentially renewing the lease at the fairgrounds. Legally, there has to be an RFP put out, and then any lease that's determined has to be approved and voted on. So it's not a simple renewal of a lease. There is a legal process that we need to do. So if this committee does decide to go in a certain endeavor, we would work with Mike Morris, the Chief Procurement Officer, and again, we'd work with City Solicitor Megan Bridges on that. Just want to report on that.
It has to be signed by the city council.
Right, it has to be approved, it has to be approved, a vote of the council to approve it. Mr. Vega, please.
So when we talk about the fairground or the Belmont building, like, how difficult, I'm just in terms of, I don't understand the calendar around this, so like, how long or how difficult would that process be if we decided?
I can answer that. Typically, for a real estate transaction, for a lease, it has to be posted for 30 days before, so that at least it's not going to happen, you know, like, that might not happen this summer, before the bids are open, and then it has to go through your approval, and then it has to go through city council approval, which could take possibly a couple of months or to the end of the summer.
Yeah, again, I could ask Mr. Morris to also send an email through me and the vice chair and Dr. Cobbs just to give some more information. I don't know anything really about procurement law, so.
Yeah, I just remember when we did the real estate transaction for all the
30
other ones,
days.
it's 30 days to posting once we produce it.
Again, after
Publish
the
it.
budget, the city council is in summer session, but they will be meeting. Once as in June and July and August, once as a full school committee, and then once as a finance committee. So if we need to have a special vote or something like that, we'll work with the president of the council on that. Any other questions relative to the moves at this time? Mr. Vega.
I know last week we approved the Goddard move, specifically having the Adult Learning Center move from the Payne building where it's currently at to Goddard.
Right, so the only open questions right now are still the Jones building. We proposed a therapeutic day and a re-engagement center, and the
high school.
The Payne building to move Edison from the high school and the BBLA to the Payne building.
But I just, in thinking about that move, that I'm just realizing that in the notes for these recommendations, what wasn't included is what happens to the pre-K that's associated with the ALC program.
You have to go with them.
Oh, okay. So in the Goddard, it would be
there'll be
community
a classroom
schools,
dedicated for the pre-K
schools, adult
classroom.
learning, and a pre-K.
Right, just like it is now.
I'm sorry, Ms. Azak, please.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought we, at one point, were discussing, I apologize. You're saying pre-K. I'm thinking the daycare. The daycare, okay.
Well, that's what he's talking about, the daycare.
The daycare, okay. So I just want to make sure, we had mentioned they weren't gonna, I thought they were gonna go to Brockton daycare or something?
That was an option. There was no decision made on that. If you felt that we didn't want to put them, in the same building again, they'd be over next door to the Adult Learning Center.
I
with
thought
the
given-
Brockton Day Nursery or one of our vendors. We have 3 vendors for daycare, for pre-K.
I thought, given the situation, that it was probably best to have them at the Brockton daycare. That's there. It's there for the younger kids.
If that's the will of the committee, just have
And
to
that
come
way-
out of the Adult Learning Center budget, to place those children, with a vendor. So.
Okay, I apologize. I thought we discussed that.
We discussed it. There was no decision made about it.
I thought we were looking into. I thought it was an easy move to move them next door.
I mean, there is adequate space for them at the guarded building. They're very large classrooms over there, probably bigger than the one they're in right now, actually.
But the Goddard building is also an older building, just like where they are right now.
Yeah.
And that whole purpose is not putting them there until we renovate.
Well, they'll be on the first floor, I'm sure. We don't have to, the space is already available for them to be on the first floor. We're renovating the second floor for the most part. So.
Okay.
There's space for them already. The classrooms are already, we're not doing much with the first floor, really.
Can we
It's already
take that
done.
to a vote? I'm not in support of that. I'm in support of them going to the daycare next door. That's how it was presented, so I just
Well,
want to make
we
sure.
discussed it, because you asked that question last time we discussed the moves, and if we wanted to do something different with the daycare that is associated with the Adult Learning Center.
I think before we entertain a vote, we just need to get a cost analysis on that. I don't know what it would be.
I don't either.
I don't know what it would be. It'd be premature to take a vote until we know the actual hard dollars to put the children over there.
I thought we had asked for it, that's why I was asking, because given the conditions, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought there was a reason we didn't want to have them at that, to move them over to the Brockton daycare.
Well, why don't we do this? We will get a cost analysis for all of us in our Friday packet on what it would cost. I don't know how they project it with how many kids. Maybe it's current kids enrollment numbers, but we should do that because we need that hard number.
Okay. Same with if we're doing renovations at Goddard. You don't want to have children in that environment if we're doing renovations at Goddard at any time.
In what environment?
Anytime you're doing renovations in older buildings, any building built before 1978.
The renovation will be done by the end of the summer.
Okay.
Dr. Klops, just could you refresh my memory, the external elevator that would be installed at the Goddard, what's the cost analysis on that?
About $300,000.
300 grand, okay. Vice Chair, followed by Mr. Vega, please.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. We're talking about the Adult Learning Center with their portion of the daycare that they have, because we voted to move them to the Goddard. I know that they're utilizing it now with younger children, so I'm just trying to understand, why are we even discussing Brockton, our vendors with daycare?
I might have missed that meeting, but I thought, I'm just going to say, I thought there was accusations of lead and things like that. So that's why they had mentioned they're going to take it over to the Brockton daycare. And that way we don't have young kids in these buildings in the lower level.
It's the same as where they are now at the Adult Learning Center, and we did discuss, if there's any lead, we can encapsulate it, or and we can test for it. But it's the same as where they are now, and to incur a perpetually who knows how long expense to outsource them. Again, that's something. We did vote to move them over there, and the assumption is that program will go with them. So.
Okay, as long as the environment
Because
they're in.
the whole point of that program is for these students attending the school would have them in the same building with them, and they leave with them, come and go with them. If we do something different, they'll have to drop them at wherever it is, and then go over to the garden, and then go back and get their kids. And so it's an expense and it's convenient for the students.
We could still get a cost analysis. I think it'd be helpful
yeah.
metric for all of
It's
us.
also a liability for us, so we need to make sure it's children
I
over
can
the
find
age
out
of 6.
how many children and their ages and what it would cost from my vendors. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vega, followed by Mr. Gomes, please.
The elevator was mentioned briefly. Is that's something that'll be complete for September?
I'm sorry?
The elevator for the
no, not for September. No, it'll be in progress during the next school year.
Is there any concern about ADA compliance?
No, not really. We'll have to probably put because we're going to replace the ramp that's there now, we'll probably have to put a temporary one to come on the other side door or the front door. But we'll accommodate that. Okay. So that's what you're speaking about, ADA compliant
Well, I think what
into
I'm
the
saying is
building?
if we're going to have the second floor, and if not all the students can access the second floor, that I think that would become an ADA compliance issue, right?
Right.
And
We'll have to, the people that can't, we'll have to have accommodations on the first floor for them.
Okay.
Just point of information, Dr. Cobbs, the 300 grand that I asked you about, is that factored into the 25 budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Gomes, please.
I was just gonna say, considering that we voted that the pre-K goes with the ALC to the Goddard, are we gonna test for any hazardous material?
Yes.
So we can, okay, just to make sure, because we're voting on this move, so we don't want to be
Exactly, and
held accountable for.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, we will, absolutely will, and if there is, we can, again, we talked about a paint product that encapsulates it, that we can, use and take care of that.
Any other questions relative to this matter on the agenda tonight? It's the will of the committee. Mr. Vega, please follow up.
I'm sorry, yeah, and it's just really more of a comment in process. I think last week I had mentioned that these are all dominoes, and I just want to go on record as saying I regret voting last week. I think we should have talked through all of these, but by voting one by one, it just there are just moves that if we're not all in agreement, it goes back to square one. So it's not a question so much as a comment. I think in the future, or if we talk about future facility moves, we've got to do it in a different manner. It's got to be done in a way where everything's being talked about at one time, and it allows questions that, this move affects pre-K, this move affects, transportation options, this move, it can't be done building by building, I realize we made a vote last week. I just want to say I regret it,
Thank you, Mr. Vega. It's the will of the committee at this time. Any further discussion? It's whatever the committee decides at this time, Mrs. Sullivan. Is there any further comments or questions, statements, motions, anything before us at this time?
So I'm willing to go on and vote for the moves. I'm willing to go on and vote for the moves.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gomes, I didn't hear you.
Before we do that,
Sure.
So in our last meeting, we requested to see. I know you guys had the conversation about the lease. Do we have a dollar amount regarding the lease as well, or no?
It's close to 200 grand.
200 grand. But we have not had a conversation with the owner.
We cannot.
We can't.
We cannot because we can't do an automatic renewal. We'd have to do an RFP. They may be the most advantageous, but there has to be a process, a legal process that's followed. I mean, this committee could take a vote to put an RFP out relative to this matter, and we could do that. But ultimately, we can't just go and say, "Hey, Mr. Carney, we want to renew your lease." We can't do that.
I'd like to make a motion to put out an RFP for the Belmont location, if possible.
It's a form of a motion.
Second.
Motion was made by Mr. Gomes, properly seconded by Ms. Oliver. Just to clarify the motions, it's to work with the procurement office and law department and solicitor's office to put an RFP out relative to the matter that's been previously discussed, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hands. That passes. I will speak to the solicitor and Mr. Morris tomorrow, along with Dr. Cobbs, and we can get that, we can fast track that out. We also, myself and the vice chair, will talk to council president because we may need to get a special meeting at some point this summer. Any other matters relative to that agenda item at this time? Seeing none, we'll go on to E, which is...
So, I
Yep.
just want to be clear on where we are with this, because again, we have to move the therapeutic day school by this summer. We have to vacate the building at the notice. We still have the students at the Brockton High School, so I know you want to put an RFP out to keep the re-engagement center where it is, but you need to decide one way or another what's going to happen to the other schools. You need to take a vote.
Ms. Oliver, please.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Can I put a motion to keep Addison, to move Addison back to the Jones Building?
Second.
Wait, I'm just trying to figure this out. You made a motion to bring the Edison back to the Jones Building?
Yes, the Champion Addison.
They were before.
We have not voted on that.
Mayor.
Yeah, please. Please, Dr. Vega. Dr. Vega.
I'm not, I guess I can disagree, but if we vote to put Edison into the Jones building, then we are assuming that we're going to get that Belmont lease renewed, and we'll end up in a situation where we can't house the re-engagement program.
Well, I can tell you, we will not renew the Westgate lease. We will not renew that, so we have to figure out.
If we move the Edison into Jones, and then we lack, our lease comes to an end, or we can't renew. What are we going to do with the re-engagement center?
And they brought in the therapeutic day school.
Yeah, therapeutic.
And Brockton virtual learning.
I'm not disagreeing that Edison can go there. This is the point I was making before. You got to get all the dominoes set up then and think about, oh, well, if you're going to do that, then it's got to go over there. We can't just simply vote building by building.
Miss Oliver than me, I guess.
Ms. Oliver, do you have any thoughts at this time?
Yes. Maybe just to clarify some stuff, the Payne School, it depends on everybody's vote, but therapeutic can go to the Payne School, and the ACL at night can continue there. And then once the Addison champ can go to Jones, and then we can keep the re-engagement in the current building they are in Belmont.
We can't keep it there guaranteed, because we have to put an RFP out, and what if we got another location that was the lowest or best bidder? So we can't just sit here collectively and say, we're gonna renew that one. And in a perfect world, it would probably be great, but legally can't do that at this time. I mean, my thoughts would be, I mean, I'm only one voting member. My thoughts would be to respectfully withdraw the motions so that we'll have time between now and Tuesday to really formulate this, because it'd be a little haphazard for us to take a vote and say, okay, we're gonna put Edison there, but what the heck are we gonna do with the other folks? Like, I just think that we kind of need to think this through for the students, the staff, and the families, but that's just my thoughts. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think that we have to kind of button up some of the other things that we would need to address with the cabinet and with Dr. Cobb's. Mr. Vice Chair, what are your thoughts on that too?
The RFP needs to go out. I've had some conversations, and I mean, this should have been done a lot sooner because we knew that this was going to come up. I don't know what the lag was. But, you know, whatever the process with the RFP, I mean, when it comes to that point, it comes to that point. I don't want to articulate saying that they're not going to bid. I think they're not going to sit with their building vacant. We're already there, so we've been there for a few years. I'm pretty sure they're going to respond to the RFP, but it's the will of the committee, and this body has the authority of what they feel is needed to be moves, and we can just take it, or we can table it just to, you know, to articulate a little bit more, but then we're just delaying the process because Dr. Cobb's needs to plan his moves, and we're in the middle of May to get his team ready. I mean, we might have to hire some moving companies like we've done in the past, because I know we don't have an army of staff to do these moves. So I think waiting was kind of delayed, but I think whatever the moves that need to be, if it doesn't happen, then we can revisit it and look at where we can accommodate the program. So it's the will of the committee.
Well, we do have a motion on the floor. It was not withdrawn. On the motion?
Yes, so it would help me. I want to see numbers. I want to see number of students on this sheet. So when I'm looking at the Jones building, that was a perfect fit for the students that are currently in the Green building right now. That was a perfect fit for them. They're not going to outgrow that building. I just want to make sure, again, we have a habit of doing this. We move students in different programs and they outgrow these buildings. And whether we grow them, we don't grow them, I just want to make sure we're not constantly doing this. There's no guarantee this is the last time we're going to do moves. If we do the RFP, and I am in support of that, we have nothing to lose by putting an RFP out before we make this decision. Given the real estate market and the way it is, I don't think an owner or a landlord would want to leave their building vacant. I think they would want to work with us, given whatever the RFP is. We're already established there, and maybe it's something we take up next year and see. I just think we have so many moves in a short period of time, and I know the cabinet's been meeting on this. We haven't. So we're getting things at meetings. We're trying to absorb the information. We're trying to do our homework on it. I know you guys have been looking at this for months, but we haven't. So, and we're the ones that are voting, so we just want to make sure we make the right decisions. And I mean, I know I've gotten a lot of phone calls. Everybody wants, their specific locations. I'd like to see, can they add the number of students that this is affecting? So we know the number of students and what the buildings actually hold. What is the capacity of the building? I mean, if you want to just call me with them, if you know them offhand.
Certainly, we can add information, but, we've had this discussion already, and you asked the same questions, and we've already
Not getting my
explained
answers,
that
Dr. Cobbs.
we've out, the Edison Day program, it already outgrew the Jones building. The classrooms are too small for them, and it doesn't allow any growth or anything. So we've had the discussion, but I'll be happy to send you that information.
Thank you.
Whether the enrollment for the schools are in the classroom capacity.
Ms. Oliver and Mr. Gomes, would you consider just
to add to that,
just
the
for tonight,
classrooms
just to revoke it so we have a little bit of time, because I just don't think this is good form right now, in my humble opinion. I think the other thing is the fairgrounds is actively on the market to be sold. The city is not buying it. We don't have the money to buy it, but, we have to consider that as well. But the first step would be to get an RFP on the streets, and I will work tomorrow, as I said. But I just think that since there is a motion on the floor, if it's not removed, we have to take a vote, and I don't think necessarily we want to vote it up or vote it down right now, so.
I can remove my motion for now while to move Champion Addison back to the Jones building while we get the RFP.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Would you remove your second at this time?
I think it was me.
It
I'll
wasn't my second.
retract my second.
It wasn't you?
No, it was me.
I didn't sleep well last night, did you?
I'll retract.
So we have no motion on the floor right now. And again, I concur with you, Ms. Azak. We'll get some additional information for metrics and numbers and students, and that would be helpful. But again, time is of the essence, so we have to figure out between now and next Tuesday when we meet here at 7 o'clock where we're going as a committee to support facilities. Because if we're gonna change from what was proposed, has to give the cabinet and Dr. Cobb's time as well. And again, it all goes back to the students, the families, and the staff. So, anything else about this tonight, this matter? Do we need Trish or Troy to be here any additional time tonight? No? Thank you very much, Trish and Troy. You can leave. Have a good night. Drive careful. The next matter was, and I know I had asked Dr. Cobbs, the Huntington Parade. We wanted to talk about it tonight. We wanted to get some dollar amounts. Do we have an update on that, Dr. Cobb's dollar amount?
So I don't have a final dollar amount yet, because we've had to go back all the way back to 2018 and find some old data on transportation. It was about 13 buses, so I've asked the transportation department to give an update on what that would cost now. I talked to Chief Perez about, details and police, as well as Chief Nardelli. So, most of that I think will be donated. So we're,
Was it 125 grand? I think that's
no,
a fake number.
no,
Yeah.
I don't think so. But there are expenses to be incurred for staff and transportation, different things. Also, the logistics of doing it and the time frame to do it. So what we wanted to understand from the school committee to decide one way or another if we were going to try to do it or not, and take a vote on it, so we can either move forward with it or spend our time on other things that we need to spend it on.
Thank you, Doctor. Ms. Azak, please.
Thank you. So if we can just clarify, I know there's a lot of talk within the city that we canceled it. We did not cancel the parade. Actually, when a couple of the members found out about it, we advocated for it. This would have been the 127th year with COVID. That's why it's the 125th. I can't see this costing that much money. It's a low-key parade. It's tradition. And it's supposed to be within the next week or two. So I can't see it being that complicated to pull this together. It's our students, the buses, if they're $400 a bus, that's $5,200. I'm not good with math offhand without my calculator, but I can't see this costing 10 grand. And I'm sure we have sponsors that would sponsor this. People look forward to it. It's a short parade. You go around a couple of blocks. It's not like our Thanksgiving Day parade that needs a lot of involvement. I'm sure if we asked people to step up and help, they would step up and help us organize it. I have no problem. Not like I don't have enough on my plate. I'll step in and help with the organization. It's tradition. This is something and I know right now our school, we don't have students in there. We do just have our IT, and we're renovating it. But it's been there for 100 and some odd years. They've been doing this. So we can't get rid of tradition. We just can't. So I motion to keep the Huntington Day Parade, and anyone that wants to step in and help us, it's really not that tough to organize it. You just coordinate with the schools, get the buses there. And for the whole thing about it's a disruption, taking the kids away from the classrooms, it's one day. It's one day. And a lot of them look forward to it. I know we ran into the JROTC commander, and I know they were planning on being there. So if we do end up voting this and the members are for it, maybe those that have organized it in years past can step up and help us. It's within the next couple of weeks. So I'll put the motion out there.
Is that the form of a motion?
That's a motion to keep the Huntington Day Parade. I mean, it's a small
I
parade.
second.
Thank you.
That was pretty close. That might have been a tie. I don't know. So the motion was made by Ms. Azak. It was properly seconded both by Mr. Sullivan and Ms. Oliver, but I'll give it to Ms. Oliver. I think she beat you, Tim. And on the motion, you had a question. I'm sorry. Dr. Cobbs, he's still working on the cost relative to transportation. Mike's not on.
We're already looking at the non-net expenses, and that's going to be more expenses for the buses.
Are there any sponsors? Sorry.
I mean, I use the youth task force money that's in my budget to do Brockton After Dark program. I mean, that's what funds Brockton After Dark. So, Trish, did you have a thought?
Yes, it would be considered a field trip, and field trips are net school spending.
Net school spending.
Yes.
Thank you.
Confusing, I know.
It's another cost,
Oh, again,
So,
yep, go ahead, Dr. Cobbs.
So I know, Joyce, you said within the next couple of weeks, so we've had contingency in working on this, and if you want to organize it, I'll be happy to have you do that, because we have a lot of other work to do, but it's not going to happen in May. It's the best date that we can come up with in working with the schools and other agencies is June 14th, which is Flag Day. So if you vote to have it, it's not going to happen in May.
Okay. As long as it happens, it's part of Brockton's history, and I'm all about history. I'm sorry, Dr. Cobbs. We just can't do away with us. I know it's a small parade for some.
We're canceling it. We're just postponing it. And we postponed it before. And whenever we have it, it'll be the 125th. So, just saying.
Motion on the floor. I'm going to call the vote. There's a motion made by Ms. Azak, properly seconded by Ms. Oliver. All in favor of re-engaging the Huntington School Parade, please raise your hand. Opposed? So it does pass, and we will work collectively as a committee to plan it, but I do concur, it wouldn't be in this month, it would have to be in June. And then once we get the hard dollar amount, I'll work with the CFO on the city side to see if there's any additional money on the city side. I know it's a net, as you said, Trish, but I don't know what money we'll have left after the youth task force, but we'll see. So we'll work on that. I'll work with Brian Nardelli, the fire chief, Brenda Perez, the police chief, and so that's a vote, and it'll go in the minutes to reflect that. Thank you. Next matter is 2024 School Committee Subcommittee Negotiating Teams. Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Everyone had a chance to review. I emailed it to everyone. The only changes is, I don't have it in front of me, is the negotiating committees where I added 4th members, and then also added Mr. Vega to negotiating committees that are actively in negotiations at this time. So if the committee is in agreement, we can take a motion and approve, and let those negotiation committees commence with the ongoing negotiations that are in effect at this moment.
Mr. Gomes, do you have thoughts at this time?
No, I was just going to make a motion.
Huh?
I was just going to make a motion.
Just before we take a motion, going forward on negotiations, both city and school side, we have to engage the CFOs as well. We need to, because we need to make sure that the dollar amounts are going to be there when we negotiate in good faith for collective bargaining. So, did you want to make a motion on that?
Yes. Motion to accept the 2024 School Committee Subcommittee Negotiation Teams.
Second.
On the motion? I'm sorry, second by Ms. Oliver on the motion?
Yes, the negotiating teams, as I said last week, people are not fairly reflected there. So they need to be fairly reflected so that everybody, all committee members, are fairly serving on negotiating teams, that it's fairly and equally done, and it's not. So I stand by what I said last week.
Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan. Any other comments at this time? I know the enterprise stated that the vice chair determined subcommittees. That's not accurate. It's always been historically the chair in conjunction with the vice chair. I just wanted Mr. Butler to please, Chris, could you just put that in the record going forward? Thank you, sir. So there is a motion on the floor. It was properly seconded. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. So that does prevail. But again, we have a lot of work to do as a collective body as well, a lot of work. The next matter is a resolution relative to regarding dropout age. Vice Chair Rodriguez, please, floor is yours.
Thank you. This past week, myself, Representative Vega, Representative Sullivan, Mr. Sullivan, we attended our regional mask committee regarding resolutions and amendments to Mass General Law, and where mask is geared towards fighting for extra funding, as Mrs. Sullivan stated, with Chapter 70 with the urban districts. This is one of the I had brought this up probably close to over a year now, year and a half. So in those discussions, I've always been looking at our dropout age, where of 16. We don't have the authority to change that. That's through the legislature, and we're just policymakers. But through the resolutions subcommittee with MASC, I proposed to do a resolution, as if this committee approves it, to increase that dropout age from 16 to 18. There's a deadline of June 1st that it has to be submitted to MASC, but they'll clean up some of the languages, however we craft it, and then it will be read and accepted into their June meeting. They will take a vote, and then it will be proposed during the MASC conference in November to a larger audience with the state, and then we would have other districts sign on to it. This is unique for Brockton because we would be the lead on it. they asked me if I wanted to, they were going to appoint me. And I believe Mr. Vega, I don't know if you want to chime in. I deferred it to Mr. Vega because I'll be out of the country at the time. So if you want to elaborate more on it, and Mr. Sullivan as well.
Well, I think one thing that bears letting folks know is that there were a couple ideas that were thrown out that evening. When the vice chair presented this idea, it was unanimously a positive response. Not only was it overwhelmingly positive response, we saw immediately people extending their hand to support in any way possible to make this, to get this in front of folks who need to see it and vote on it. So the idea that Brockton could be at the forefront of what could be an incredibly powerful adjustment is very exciting, and I think and highlights what goes on here in Brockton and the kind of thinking and commitment we have to social justice. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vega. Mr. Sullivan, any thoughts?
Yes, I just wanted to say that there was a number of people at that meeting. It was done on Zoom. I'm not sure how many, but there was quite a few. In the resolution that Mr. Rodriguez proposed was unanimously accepted by the chair there, and he asked that it be voted on this tonight so we can get into his book by June 1st. The way I understand it is he's waiting for a phone call tonight that it's passed by this committee, and he's going to go on to a regular mass committee after that. And we present it as a Brockton resolution. And it's to raise the age of the kids can drop out at 16 years old, and it's to raise it to 18. So they have to be at least 18 years old in order to quit school. It's to keep the kids in school.
I think it's brilliant. And again, Brockton was at the forefront of the Webby case, the Hancock case, McDuffie case. Student opportunity was because of Brockton, right? So I wholeheartedly support this. Ms. Oliver.
May I make a motion?
Can. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion for the resolution regarding dropout age from 16 to 18.
Second.
Motion was made by Ms. Oliver, properly seconded by Ms. Azak. All in favor of supporting this, please raise your hand. If you're opposed, raise your hand. It passes unanimous, so thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. So I would work with council to draft up a resolution. Hopefully we can get it by this week, and everyone, hopefully we can get it in the packet, if not via email, and then we'll vote on it again on Tuesday, and I'll submit that to the incoming president, and then they'll take it up in their committee, and mid-June, I believe the date was, and then from there it will carry on to the mass conference in November, where members here that attend will actually present this resolution to all the school committee members across the state, and they'll sign on, and then we'll move it to the legislature to see if we can amend that law and change that age from 16 to 18. So it's not a Brockton thing, this is a Commonwealth thing.
Point of information, I think once we formalize it on Tuesday, as a professional courtesy to fellow elected officials, we should tell the delegation, Senator Brady and the three reps, right, Cassie, Dubois, and Mendez, just to let them know, give them kind of a heads up on it. I can't speak for them, but I don't know why they wouldn't support this, so we'll chat with them as well, okay? We'll go on to Agenda 9. Again, it's executive session. I need to read two of the matters into the record. Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, all non-union contracts. And then finally, it's Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21.7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements, open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21FG, for the purpose of reviewing, approving, and/or releasing executive session minutes. I need a motion to go into executive session.
Motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Sullivan, is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Mr. Sullivan, properly seconded by Mr. Vega. I need to call the roll right now. Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Gomes?
Yes.
Mr. Vega?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Vice Chair?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. We're going to executive session. We are not, I understate, not coming back into open session tonight. We'll go into executive session now, same room we were at earlier today. Thank you.